NBA Draft Day 1 finally has wrapped up, and it was absolutely electric with lots of movement going up and down the board, some trades coming in, and even some shocking picks as well. So, we're going to dive in and explore each team's pick, going over some just quick thoughts. Initially, what I think so far, following the day 1 stuff, looking at some trades, looking at all the stuff that happened in the draft today, and then we'll also do that tomorrow going into draft day 2. But welcome back to an episode here on Swish City. I'm Bruce Veliz. I really do appreciate all your guys' support. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on NBA news for the offseason, this is a place for you to get news on trades, draft, free agency, sleepers, teams that I really like that won the draft, teams that I think weren't the best in the draft. We're going to be breaking down all of that this offseason. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at, just the pick drafts overall, giving my initial reactions and stuff like that. And I think it's going to be very, very fun. So without further ado, let's dive in. If you do enjoy the content, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on draft day 1. Did your team do good? Did you like the picks that you make? And if I said something about your team and you disagree, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. But without further ado, let's dive into it. I also do want to preface that usually I do have stock images, but with it being talking about 30 teams, I'm not going to be doing that today, and it is also almost 4 in the morning at this point. So if I am a little bit quiet, if I'm not the most energetic, that is why, but I wanted to get this video out and up for you guys in the morning so that you guys can get these reactions in before draft day 2, or if any trades or anything like that does happen. So like I said, without further ado, let's dive into it. So the first couple ones are going to be quick because they were kind of obvious here for many of these teams, right? Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks, they took Cooper Flag with the number 1 overall pick. Going to be very interesting to see what him, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and this new look Dallas Mavericks team can do with their flexible contracts and assets they do have. The Mavericks are said to be active out there in the market, and I obviously do think they'll be a team trying to make some noise into the playoffs before Kyrie Irving returns, and then obviously similar to their finals appearance just 2 seasons ago, have a very solid second half late surge with this team alongside a nice rookie in Cooper Flag. I'm excited to see what he's able to bring. The main event, obviously, being from Massachusetts, I'm very, very high on my New England guys, and I really can't wait to see what he can turn out to be, and I'm hoping for the best for Cooper Flag. I think that obviously Dallas got lucky with getting this pick, but I am very, very happy to see a guy in Cooper Flag be the number 1 overall pick, and I'm excited to see what he can do. With the second overall pick, we're talking about a guy in Dylan Harper, went to Rutgers, arguably would be the number 1 overall pick if Cooper wasn't here in the draft and didn't reclassify. Dylan Harper is just an insane point guard, super high talent being compared to guys like Cade Cunningham, James Harden, like they were saying on ESPN, and etc. I think he's obviously a great downhill threat, going to be able to work in the pick and roll. San Antonio, similar to Dallas, gets blessed, jumps up these ranks to get a guy like this. Obviously, there's a little bit of a fit concern with guys like Castle and guys like Fox already being there, but with the Spurs having position in basketball and vying that guys like Castle and Fox can be able to play off ball alongside a guy like Harper, they feel that this team could be able to succeed with the pick that they did make in Harper, and taking the best available, obviously at pick 2 makes the most sense. There were rumblings about the Spurs potentially trading, but they did not. They select this pick, and even though a lot of people do question the fit, I do think it makes sense because there's the possibility that San Antonio looks down the line with some of these other guards that they do have and looks to move off of them and still hits a draft pick with Castle or with Dylan Harper and is very successful. And you can't pass that opportunity just because you already have that position filled up with some of these younger guys. Really like the pick for San Antonio. When looking at the Sixers, they obviously drafted VJ Edgecombe. Ace Bailey was projected to go number 3 earlier on. Then the reports were coming out with the draft camp, all this yada yada of him not really fitting in. I also don't think he would have been the perfect fit alongside Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Jared McCain. I do think he needs the ball in his hands. And where he did actually get drafted, which we'll get into a little bit, I think that opportunity is going to present himself very vividly for him to have the ball in his hands and to be that shot creator and scorer. VJ Edgecombe, though, when looking at him, he is the athletic freak. A lot of people comparing him to one of those high athletic shooting guards, guys like Victor Oladipo, Dwayne Wade, Anthony Edwards, and I do see those flashes and shades of him in this game. I do like the fit better alongside guys like Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain because they're obviously shot creators, guys who are going to create their own shot off the dribble, play make, and set up a guy like VJ Edgecombe who's going to be slashing to the rim, looking to be a little bit of a lob threat, and just cutting to the basket, looking for those backdoor cuts and easy finishes at the rim. Similarly, they don't have a wing that can really do that. Besides a guy on Paul George, with his availability that last season, there's still some uncertainties of what he's going to look like for this team and what this direction of this Philadelphia 76ers team is really going to look like. So if they're able to bring back Quentin Grimes and have some nice runs with him, McCain, Maxey, and VJ Edgecombe, and Paul George and Joel Embiid don't really work out, at least the Sixers still have a foolproof plan of some young guys that can really develop and hopefully change the course for their future. When looking at pick 4, that was also a questionable one as well. Con Kneppel was someone that a lot of people were, not really certain on what the Hornets were going to be able to do because there was some uncertainty of them potentially trading back. Would they take Ace Bailey even though they didn't work him out? But they went and took a guy in Con Kneppel who had some ties with obviously Charlotte with him going to Duke. It makes a little bit sense taking the North Carolina kid from college, and Con's going to be one of the safer picks here. He obviously presents himself as a great scorer, and it seems like he's an easy plug-and-play fit. And alongside guys like Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, I think he's going to be perfect on the wing. Also is very different from the pick that they selected at last year's draft in TJ Salone, who was a little bit of a riskier, high-flying pick with a lot of potential upside, but not really a high ceiling, but a low floor. A guy in Con Kneppel has a high floor, better than more some of these prospects. So it is a little bit better telling for the Hornets and maybe being a little bit conservative in some moves that they do in the future. But the Hornets will be involved here a little bit later on in the video when we discuss some potential trades because they found a way to get back into the first round here later on down the line. But when we look at pick number 5, this is where that guy Ace Bailey does come into play here. Now Bailey did not really want to go to the Utah Jazz. It was seemingly said that he had some preferences of some teams, even though it was kind of reported that he said before the draft that he didn't have a preference. It was reported that maybe Washington, New Orleans, or maybe even Brooklyn was a team that he'd be more interested in. But Utah is a team that he is going to be going to. Utah obviously does not pass up on the opportunity of taking a guy in Ace Bailey, someone that they had at probably number 3 on their big board, and with them falling out of the top 3 picks, was still able to nab at pick 5 without having to trade up for it. Ultimately, with the Jazz still having some veteran contracts, guys like Colin Sexton, John Collins, who opted in a player option today, even guys like Lauri Markkanen, does seem like there's some uncertainty in Utah and what direction they really need to go to, and maybe going into this rebuild is what they want to do, but also with sticking into this rebuild, they want to find their guy. And I feel like in this draft, not only did they try to do that with a guy in Ace Bailey, who, if he is going to be commanding as the number 1 option for this Utah Jazz team, even though he is a raw prospect and needs some time to develop, can be that potential piece if all the aspects of his game truly do cross over, not only just on the court, but off the court as well, be what he's compared to be with this next Kevin Durant, next Carmelo Anthony, next type of offensive prolific wing that we could see develop in the NBA. If he does hit that full potential for Utah, that is an absolute home run because there's no way impossible that you're going to be able to get a guy like that via a trade or via the free agency due to the fact you are a small market team and a young rebuilding team. So taking that swing on Ace Bailey, I really, really like. And they also took another swing here later on in the draft, which I also really like, and them kind of commanding some guys that I think are going to kind of change this culture here. Austin Ainge, their new GM, did come in here, said that they want to be a little bit more competitive. They don't want to be tanking anymore. And obviously that might be a little bit weird with how you look at the roster and how the Western Conference is stacked. They might still be towards the bottom, but I think they're envisioning a different culture of guys that they want to bring in, and I think they're envisioning a different brand of how they want to build this team, and that was clearly put on display not only with Ace Bailey, but their pick that they made so later on, which we'll get into in a little bit. So then comes pick 6, and that's where the Washington Wizards fall, and this is where, with my predictions here, I was also a little bit right. They selected Trey Johnson. Now, I like Trey Johnson or Jeremiah Fias to the Washington Wizards, and this was before the Jordan Poole trade, but it became even more evident after the Jordan Poole trade, where the Washington Wizards got a guy in CJ McCollum, who seemed to be more of a veteran point guard that was going to be replacing the Malcolm Brogdon role that they're going to be losing in free agency, along some of these other veterans, that going for that all-out shooting guard to pair up alongside a guy in Bub Carrington to be that shot creator and scorer was going to be the way they go. And they went with Trey Johnson, who's arguably the best shooter in this draft class, one of the best shot creators and catch and shoot guys. I really, really like what Trey Johnson's going to be able to bring on the offensive side of the ball. I also think he fits in really well alongside the wings that they did draft, guys like Bilal Coulibaly, Chris Middleton, Keyshawn George, another one that they took in this draft as well. And I'm really, really liking this Trey Johnson pick. I thought originally he would be going to Utah with Ace Bailey going in the top 5. So him personally being a top 5 guy in my eyes, falling into the top 6 is a great pickup for the Washington Wizards, and I'm really liking the direction that this Wizards team has been heading over these last couple of days. They've been prioritizing the veterans, but also prioritizing freeing up some salary cap in space in free agency. So when they do finish this little bit of a good season this year with some young guys really developing, they can kind of make those pivoting moves once again, similar to a team like the Rockets or the Pistons, where I think they buy into some better veterans, but maybe are a little bit more impactful, and that can take them into the next step of trying to be a play-in or playoff team here in this Eastern Conference. Now, when looking at pick 7, that is the team that they did trade, like I mentioned just yesterday, with in the New Orleans Pelicans, and they went and selected the other guard here, in Jeremiah Fears, someone that I also really liked for the Washington Wizards and for the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, I liked him for the Pelicans before they got Jordan Poole, because I thought he could kind of take over, and if they did a CJ McCollum or a DeJounte Murray trade, that would make a little bit of sense for them, to let him be that leading guard, because I do still think with him being a freshman at Oklahoma and still having a little bit of a rawer build here, for being a younger guy coming in here, he's going to need to take some time, a couple years to develop. So having that full point guard room to himself, I think, would have been able to make that a little bit easier for a guy in Jeremiah Fears. But obviously, a guy to keep an eye on in the future, I do think now, is DeJounte Murray. He obviously is coming off an ACL injury, and it doesn't seem like with the Pelicans that their direction is to kind of be competing and to be winning at this point. I think it's kind of to stay in that middle or to be a little bit younger, and maybe a guy like DeJounte Murray could covet them some assets to where if he does come back and can play up to value before the trade deadline or even into the offseason next year, as well, could present themselves, if Jeremiah Fears does look to be that top guy, to be able to get some other assets to fill in some holes for this team to take that next step in that direction. So I do like the Fears pick, but I do think with the other guards that they do have, obviously Jordan Poole and DeJounte Murray, it is a little bit weird, but I do think there's the option for Jeremiah Fears, if he is able to stand out here, to really take off and be that game changer for the Pelicans. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and here's where we get into the fun part of the draft, because now when we look at pick 8, this is where everyone's jaw dropped, including myself. This is where the Brooklyn Nets, a team who had 5 first-round picks after recently acquiring one yesterday from the deal with Kristaps Porzingis and the Boston Celtics and Atlanta Hawks, they said that they were going to reportedly trade up, and that was what the rumors were pointing to. Nope, they took 5 guys here in the first round with all 5 of their selections, and their first one was Yegor Demon from BYU. And Yegor was a guy that had been a little bit fluctuating on a lot of people's draft boards. Earlier into the combine, he had seemingly rose into the lottery, but it was never a foregone conclusion that he was going to be selected. And if he was going to be selected in the lottery, it did seem like it was going to be a little bit of a later pick, right? Maybe 12, 13, possibly 14, but if not, maybe outside, maybe 15 to 20-ish type of range here. But Demon shoots all the way up to 8, look as the best playmaking point guard coming out of BYU. Obviously, a bigger size guy is going to help to kind of be this new navigating piece, and maybe this is something where the Brooklyn Nets see a guy in Josh Giddey who's a very similar type of play style build, where if they felt like they were trying to get him in free agency, that was the guy they were going to go get with their money, but they felt like they couldn't reach out and go get him. So now they're bringing a guy in Yegor Demon who they think can kind of be that type of replication at a younger age as well. The only question mark I do have with Demon is his ability to be an offensive creator with his jump shot. It's not the greatest, and I do think that that's some trouble with the Brooklyn Nets here. But with Brooklyn, the one key thing to mention is they have Cam Thomas, who's an absolute gunner and sharpshooter. So a guy like Yegor Demon, who hopefully can compensate that obviously defensive capabilities with his size and length, being, I believe, 6'7" here at the point guard position, playing alongside a guy in Cam Thomas. I think that would definitely help for the Brooklyn Nets. And it does seemingly look like D'Angelo Russell will not be back, which is kind of key. I think them trying to find this point guard, this pass-forward point guard, especially if they're going to be keeping a guy in Cam Thomas, is key. And oh, trust me, they went and tried to draft that point guard, because we'll get into the Nets a little bit later, and they had some more fun picks because, like I mentioned, they took all 5. But the most interesting pick after the Brooklyn Nets came in at number 9 with the Toronto Raptors, as a lot of people had Kamon Maluach around pick 8, pick 9 here in the lottery here, with teams maybe like the Nets trying to trade Claxton, maybe the Raptors trying to trade Jakob Poeltl, having some interest. But Maluach fell, and we'll get to where he fell just in a little bit, because the Raptors decided to not take him, similar to the Nets, and they went with Colin Murray Boyles, 6'6" or 6'8" center, slash power forward out of South Carolina. Now, Colin Murray Boyles, I would say a lot of people are giving him this comp, and it makes sense why. He is basically a little bit of a Draymond Green type guy, a little bit of a shorter center, a little bit of a small ball guy, but is a bruiser, someone that can work in the low post and is a pretty solid passer as well with some great rebounding skill. I do think that in the NBA he's going to translate as a power forward slash center, kind of be a little bit of a tweener. Those are a little bit concerning in the NBA, but I do think with his defensive capabilities, that's going to be able to help him be on the floor with his aggressiveness to be a rebounder. It's going to be key. And it's a weird fit with Toronto. I tweeted out that he does scream a little bit of a Toronto pick just because he is a tweener. He's a little bit of a underrated gem, and Toronto, for some reason, loves those guys, and they love their like wing combo big slash forwards. Like look at Chris Boucher and stuff like that. Colin Murray Boyles just screams Toronto Raptors here. Now I was shocked that they did take him. Not gonna lie, with Malawak on the board, I felt like they would go lean him over Colin Murray Boyles, but I am not mad because the Suns, team that I do like, I won't lie, and cover here over on some sports media world besides doing here on Switch City, they made what I think was the best selection in the lottery. Common Malawak, ladies and gentlemen, falling to pick 10, something I did not see happening. Let me know if you thought Malawak was going to fall to pick 10 here tonight, but I did not foresee this coming through for the Suns. It was an absolute blessing. Landing Common Malawak, a defensive big, someone that can help retool this team and reset their defensive identity, something they were definitely lacking post DeAndre Ayton trade fiasco, and in these last couple of seasons of trying to find a big, they have not been able to solve those issues of a rebounder as an interior rim protector, as someone who can play in the low post, someone that can work the pick and roll with Devin Booker, which was very successful for those Suns' deep playoff runs and finals run in 2021. They need that guy. And even though Malawak was a little bit of a raw talent coming in at 18 years old, starting to play basketball at the only age of 14, he has had a lot of success in the NBA in his short period of time. He's played for South Sudan in the Olympics, where he was a little bit of an impact, and he also played with Duke alongside Malawak and alongside Con Knipple. I really, really like this pick. I think he has, if he pans out, to be the best defensive big in this draft class here with his size, 7'2", 7'6" wingspan, going to be an absolute freak of nature. Obviously, if he can develop a jump shot a little bit more, we can see that 3 translate. I think he can be an even better project, and he was beyond happy to be even getting drafted, meanwhile, by the Phoenix Suns. So I'm very, very emphatic to see what he can be able to bring out for this squad. I think he was a great pickup for this team. And not only did the Suns make a selection at pick 10 with drafting a center, they made a trade as well. As like I alluded to earlier, the Charlotte Hornets got back into this draft, and they got back into it by acquiring the Suns' 29th overall pick this year, alongside a 2029 future first, which the Suns got in trading away their 2031 first last offseason. And they sent away Vasily Micic to the Charlotte Hornets, a good old buddy of the Suns who had done recent trades in the last couple months, for Mark Williams. And Mark Williams is a great starting center that you can add in. Once again, very similar qualities to Colin Malawak. And Malawak even said following the draft night, once he found out that Williams had been traded, that him and Williams obviously had a little bit of a relationship due to the fact that both bigs did go and play at Duke. So I really like that. Malawak, I think, can, obviously being a raw prospect, like I mentioned, can learn a lot from a guy in Mark Williams. Even though Mark Williams is still a younger guy at 24, 25 years old, I still think he can be a great mentor because they share very similar qualities of how to play basketball, right? They're both really solid interior rim protectors, really effective rebounders, with Mark Williams having games of 15, 20 plus rebounds. And I do think for Devin Booker, it signals that you're giving him a starting center that he can, one, play with, but also someone that also can continue to stay long term. Williams is a RFA going into next season, so I have to see how the Suns gauge that. With them still being in the second apron, they still need to shed some salary, so maybe that's something they wait for next season, or to see how he plays dealing with his injuries, because that's always a major concern and a red flag with Williams, hence why his trade got rescinded with the Lakers last year. But the Suns gave up less than the Lakers did to get Mark Williams, and they get another piece that can be a solid starter for now, or potentially even key backup if Malawak is able to pass him, or if he is injured and needs some limited play to succeed with this team to get his best ability. I can see that happening with the Phoenix Suns. Overall, the Suns had basically no center help going into last year, and now come out with Common Malawak and Mark Williams, two very intriguing, rim-protecting, shot-blocking, high-key volume centers, with still having guys like Nick Richards and Oso Guardaro on this roster, and I think that's a great spot for the Suns team. So now is where it also got interesting, as at pick 11, we saw another big trade here. And there were some trades here throughout the draft lottery, and this one occurred between the Grizzlies and the Blazers. The Blazers moved away from pick 11 and moved down to pick 16, and doing so acquired future seconds and the 2028 Orlando first round pick from the Memphis Grizzlies, which they got from the Desmond Bane trade, in order to get pick 11. So the Blazers got 16, a future first, and 2 seconds, while the Grizzlies moved up. The Grizzlies took Cedric Coward, a player that was very polarizing in this draft, someone that has some great comps as a two-way wing and has the potential that a lot of people think to be one of the best players in this draft. Played at D3, then played at Eastern Washington, was supposed to go to Duke. Didn't go to Duke because everyone said you can dominate in this NBA, and I think that's what the Grizzlies did see. Grizzlies, we did see also have not try to shed some salary by trading Desmond Bane. Now bringing a guy in Cedric Coward, who can be that two-way wing, and something that they've been chasing for these last couple of years, right? They've been interested in Mikal Bridges, interested in OG Anunoby, had drafted Zaire Williams, had tried to nail these picks here at this wing position, and as a two-way wing. And I think they really did hit it here with Cedric Coward. Not only that, but the Grizzlies have been known to be really solid with drafting, having some of these great two-way players like Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, Jay Huff, Scottie Pippen Jr., be able to turn into great project pieces. So if there's anybody that's going to tell you that with their draft selection, they know what they're doing, it's the Memphis Grizzlies over the last couple of seasons. If you had any uncertainty that a guy in Cedric Coward was not going to pan out in the NBA, they should definitely steer you in that other direction. Because if the Grizzlies wasted ammo to trade up for him because they feel confident, and they're already notoriously known for drafting players good later in the rounds, they knew Cedric Coward wasn't going to make it to them at 16, and they know how lethal he's going to be. I really like this pick for the Memphis Grizzlies. And shout out to Chris Vernon, who also mentioned this on his podcast, because they definitely made a smart move here by getting up and getting pick 11. And at pick 12, we saw the Bulls come in here. They drafted Noah Asenge from the German League, a French wing, 6'8 piece. I think can play a little bit of power forward and center. Don't really know much about Noah Asenge, so if you are a Bulls fan or if you know a little bit more of him, let me know down below in the comment section. With the national players, it's a little bit harder of a focus to really keep a key eye on them. But a guy in Noah Asenge, I really do like. Not that I know as much, but what had some hype around the lottery projections, and I think was talked about with the Suns, potentially even the Raptors, and could be a good fit for this Bulls team, especially with their uncertainty of their wings, like Jalen Smith, obviously maybe not. Patrick Williams is on a little bit of a weird contract. Matas Buzelis, their wing pick from last year, was really successful, and I think Asenge can kind of complement some of those other things that he does on the offensive end with the defensive end, and that's something key to keep an eye on, especially with him having a little bit of a wonky contract in Patrick Williams. Maybe Asenge is that new forward that they are trying to believe in. All right, and then with pick 13, we saw another wild trade, and this was probably the craziest trade of them all. The Hawks, team that was talked about to be interested in pick 5 just yesterday, then traded for Porzingis, then trades back from pick 13 to pick 23 with the New Orleans Pelicans, as the Pelicans shoot all the way up to get a guy that they were interested in. Rumors were flying around with pick 7 in Derek Queen, and in return, the Pelicans gave up pick 23, like I mentioned, in this year's draft that they got from the Pacers originally, and pick a future first-round pick in 2026, which is the worst in Milwaukee and New Orleans, unprotected. I don't understand. Maybe New Orleans feels some confidence with this core, with Zion. They think they could be a playoff team with Derek Queen and all this stuff, but that is just a wild pick to give up, especially with the uncertainty of Giannis still remaining this year. You don't know what's still going to happen. All signs are leading that he's going to stay, but you still don't know. So, like I mentioned, really weird pick from the Pelicans here, but for the Atlanta Hawks, great asset pool for them to get back in a trade. Really solid job. And for the Pelicans, selecting Derek Queen, I think it's a solid pick. Like I mentioned, Derek Queen, very effective player offensively as a little bit of a tweener big 4/5. A lot of people have some discrepancies about his defensive style, but coming into a team like the New Orleans Pelicans, I do kind of like the fit. Obviously, there's still uncertainties about Zion, but Yves Missy could be a solid defensive big for him to play alongside against. And I think for the Pelicans, you kind of got to take these risks, right? You kind of got to go into with this new regime with Joe Dumars, kind of buy into some more younger prospects, and maybe that still presents some possibilities for a Trey Murphy, Herbert Jones, Zion Williams trade maybe tomorrow or in the next couple of days or next couple of weeks. But even if not, right, kind of getting some new faces in, some nice new prospects in to kind of believe in, to kind of jumpstart this rotation of a new core is what's needed, especially if you kind of just having fun and excitement, trying to just kind of figure it out, right? That's why you make a Jordan Poole trade. That's why you bring in a Jeremiah Fears. That's why you drafted Derek Queen. And we'll have to see what it really pans out for the Pelicans. I'm not having high expectations, but for some reason, if it does all turn around for them, where they have some nice blossoming pieces, even if they're not a good squad record-wise, I think that would be definitely enticing for fans of the team and for people around the NBA to be like, that's actually very nice for the Pelicans. And then rounding out the lottery here, we're almost at 25 minutes here of the video. Rounding out the lottery, sorry for my reapping, is Carter Bryant. And we'll go faster for some of the other picks, but Carter Bryant coming out of U of A, very, very solid pick. Like I mentioned, with this one and the next one, San Antonio and Oklahoma City, they just continue to get better. It's just proven that they know how to draft, and they just do their job, do their due diligence. Carter Bryant, fantastic wing, really, really solid defender, has some quarrels about his offensive game, if he's going to be able to pan out, if he's going to be able to develop as a stretch guy and be able to create a shot and do all that stuff because of his limitations of playing time over in Arizona, but I don't think that that's really much of a problem. He is going to fit in great in San Antonio, playing alongside these wings already there in Harrison Barnes and Jeremy Sohan and Keldon Johnson, but I also think gives the option for San Antonio to kind of be like, all right, you need to step up and play, and if you're not going to step up and play and Carter Bryant looks better, then we're going to get some upgrades, and kind of jumps forward that San Antonio retool a little bit from what we heard from Kevin Durant talks to them not really being interested. Maybe not this offseason, but in a year or two, we do see some movement from San Antonio, especially within that wing department, depending on how these guys look. But Carter Bryant, like I mentioned, going to be a great pick. San Antonio hits on another gem, and a guy that I think is one of the safer picks, is I think his floor, similar to a guy in Con Kneppel, is very, very, very high. His expectations of really he is expected to be a quality impact player. Now, looking at pick 15, like I mentioned, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they got my favorite prospect in the entire draft, someone I was very high on, Thomas Sorber, coming out of Georgetown. Obviously, there were some weird things about Sorber going on with his foot, with his injury, and there was some uncertainties with him not participating in the combine. But I do think that if he did not get injured, he would have been a lock for the lottery, potentially even a top 10 pick. With his ability to be such a defensive menace, he, like Malawak, I think is going to be the best defensive center. If not, Malawak is. It's really a tie there for me personally. His footwork is absolutely incredible. It's immensely skilled. He's going to be able to work underneath the basket very, very solidly. And you pair him alongside other great bigs, right? And Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, it's just ridiculous. If he really does pan out on the offensive side of the ball, can develop a little bit of a jump shot, can switch onto these other bigs, OKC has a real scary tandem of dominant bigs in their rotation that they can just throw out there and just have fun with and basically just laugh at you, because they got two guys over 7 feet that are just going to block every shot that you try to even possibly bring to the rim. I love this pick for Oklahoma City, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, with them having Cason Wallace, my guy from Kentucky, them having Thomas Sorber, I'm definitely going to be tuning into some more Oklahoma City Thunder games going into next year. I'm very, very high on them, and I'm very interested to see what they can do. And then we'll get into the Portland Trail Blazers pick, the most shocking pick following Yegor Demon, coming in at pick 8, now jumping 8 more picks later, is going to be Hanson Yang for the Portland Trail Blazers. Like I mentioned, they did this trade with the Grizzlies. They traded back from 11, trading away from Cedric Howard, losing it on all those guys I just mentioned, for getting a person in Hanson Yang. Hanson Yang wasn't really a person that was on a lot of people's big boards at that pick. He was more of a second round guy, maybe even late first, which is why a lot of people were concerned in the selection here with the Blazers. But it is said that the Blazers did really like the pick. They do think that he can be a solid passing big. Like I mentioned, I did not do much research on a guy in Hanson Yang, so I didn't really see what he could really be for these teams or for the Blazers kind of going into the draft. But it is definitely very intriguing to see that, and also due to the fact that they have multiple centers on this roster, right? They drafted Donovan Clingan last year. They also have Robert Williams. They also have DeAndre Ayton. So it is very, very interesting to see what they do. Sorry, Yang Hansen is his name, or Hansen Yang, I believe. Yes, I think that's his name. Sorry. But very interesting for the Blazers. Similar to Yegor Demon. A little bit confusing. We'll have to see what it turns out to be. Alrighty, and with it being 30 minutes long, we're going to go a little bit rapid fire for some of these last ones so we can speed it up for you guys. So, John Berenger for the Timberwolves here coming at 17. I really like that pick for them. Similar to a Rudy Gobert, not only just a French big, but the best shot blocker in the draft class here. Very, very key on those defensive intangibles. Obviously, going to have to work on a little bit of the offensive game. But for the Timberwolves here, having Rudy Gobert as a mentor is not only just going to be key for his development because they play a very similar role, but I do think in a year or two when this Rudy Gobert contract does get a little tantalizing or a little bit scary, you can find a possibility to get out of it via a trade, in which still having that replacement in Berenger to kind of fill in that void alongside Anthony Edwards as still that rim protector, with potentially having the availability, if you do keep a guy in Naz Reid, to have that little 1-2 tandem of a younger Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert that you had a couple years ago with Berenger and Naz Reid. Really like that pick for them. Obviously, I think they would have liked to have Sorber, and if Sorber fell into 17, that would have been even better. But definitely like Berenger at 17. And then pick 18 was originally the Washington Wizards, but like I mentioned to you guys over here, there were some trades. And the Utah Jazz, they made a selection in Ace Bailey at pick 5. They made a trade up, and they went all the way to pick 18 from pick 21, giving out some future draft capital in return to select a guy in Walter Clayton Jr., who a lot of people were also kind of polarized in this draft. Maybe a little bit earlier on was going in the late first round, went into the middle of the first round here, post-combine and post couple of weeks have been rising in some stocks. But Clayton is a shot creator, a guy who really took over at Florida, winning the national championship, but being that guy in clutch moments and delivering. And a team like the Utah Jazz need that at that point guard position. They're considering trading guys like Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton, who are on those expiring contracts, and the young guys that they have drafted at that position, guys like Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, haven't been able to step up to take that next step. And I think injecting a guy like Walter Clayton Jr., similarly with Austin Ainge coming into this front office and wanting to get these kind of guys that can really take that next step, have that high potential to be key game changers right immediately and not be project pieces to develop and kind of pan out for and really hope on, I do believe that this is the right decision to go for Utah to kind of, just bring out some life for their team. You know what I mean? And just make things very interesting. And I think a guy like Walter Clayton and Ace Bailey is kind of getting that new voice of that confidence into that team and into that vision of this locker room and this franchise to really take that next step and finding these project pieces and really developing them. And I think they really did a great job here with those two picks. And then we're back to the Nets, who, once again, had a weird pick with Yegor Demon. And not that I would say this necessarily was a weird pick, but for how they picked their draft today, which we'll get into a little bit, it was a little bit of weird. They went Nolan Traore. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name. He is another guard also from the French league. He was someone that going into the draft last year, if you remember, at the end of the draft, was supposed to be, a very early top 5 pick. Obviously fell a little bit, but a solid playmaking French guard, going to kind of come and fit in. The Nets did a little bit of weird things, and when we get into some more picks here, we can kind of explain what they're really doing. But just trying to find some playmakers, just trying to play some guards. But I really do think that this Nets team wants to go full tank, full bottom out, right? Just trying to just be towards the bottom, which makes sense following last year's kind of half-assed job of doing that and getting pick 8, right? You want to fully set yourself up to be in the best position here. So really investing into those guards, trying to find that playmaker for Cam Thomas, and I guess kind of how I tweeted out on Twitter, running the depth chart of point guards to figure out who can be that starting one eventually for you is the way to go for them. And when we get to some later picks, you'll see what they did. Like I mentioned, with Nolan Traore, I don't really know much about him. I'm going to have to do some more research. But from what I could see from the draft and from what people were basically saying is that it's a very similar playmaking point guard, similar to a guy in Yegor Demon, which is a little bit concerning for me for the Nets. And then, of course, the Miami Heat at pick 20, a team rumored to potentially be trading the pick, striking it, a lottery player that fell out of the lottery. Yeah, Kaspers Yakuchonis from Illinois. Somehow, Miami Heat gets lucky every single year. Sometimes they just find these not only just find the hidden gems, guys like Max Struess, uh, Caleb Martin, um, and the underappreciated guys that were on those Heat teams, but they go out and they get lucky with the draft too. Kasparis Jakuchonis, a guy that was projected before the combine, top 5, top 6, top 10 in most drafts, even going into the draft here tonight, around top 10 to top 15, fell all the way to 20 into the laps of Pat Riley, Miami Heat. They got to be laughing for joy like this. The Lithuanian point guard, absolutely insane at 6'8", playmaking, really, really solid. Going to be a great fit alongside Tyler Hero, playing alongside Bam Adebayo, Kello Ware. I'm really, really intrigued with this pick. I really like it personally for them. And I think it potentially has the potential to be one of the best picks in the draft, with him being a sleeper. The fact that he fell all the way to 20 was insane, and the fact that he fell to the Heat at 20 is even more criminal in my opinion. Now, when looking at the next pick here, we do see that it involves the Wizards, excuse me. This was the Jazz pick that they traded back for when the Jazz traded for Walter Clayton, which we mentioned just a few minutes ago. That pick was Will Riley from Illinois. Don't really know much on Will Riley, but both Illinois draft picks in the first round were selected back to back, which is kind of funny. And also, one thing that I do know with the Wizards here is they're building in a nice core here of forwards, right? They got Corey Kispert, who maybe potentially be traded, but they got Will Riley. They got Bilal Coulibaly, who they drafted 2 seasons ago, Keyshawn George, who they drafted last year, Chris Middleton, who they have. They're really, really trying to build out this wing core, and it's going to be nice to see what they're able to produce out there on the court. Not only just that, what this Wizards team is able to do in the future with some of these expiring contracts and potential guys. It does seem like they're kind of bracing for the ability of anyone really panning out for this team, which I like that kind of build style, and I think it could have some success for them. So closing on the end of the draft with these last 10 picks, which is nice. The Hawks traded their number 22 overall pick to the Nets yesterday in that Porzingis deal, and the Nets here don't take a guard this time. They take Drake Powell, 3-and-D wing from UNC. Shout out to my boy Nick NBA over on YouTube, but he's a guy that was a big fan of Drake Powell for the Boston Celtics. Unfortunately, it fall all the way down there, but the wing is a very, very scrappy defender, has that length, has that size. I think can be a key impact player, and as a little bit of an intriguing piece for Brooklyn. Obviously, they don't really have this type of prolific player on their roster at the moment. So I do think, obviously, striking at a role that they don't possess, and one that's definitely going to be viable around the NBA, specifically with the wing position commanding so much of star players in volume, especially in the Eastern Conference, even looking at their division with Jaylen Brown, and when Jason Tatum does come back, having a guy like Drake Powell is going to be nice for them to kind of keep up on that end, specifically at the wing position as a defender. The pick 23 was the Hawks pick, the one that they got from the Pelicans that they traded back for. Remember, with Derek Queen. With that pick, they selected Asa Newell coming out of Georgia. For one, I'm always going to be a big fan of a player getting drafted to a team that he played in college. That is just crazy. The Georgia University kid going to the Atlanta Hawks, that's just got to be a great story. But Newell plays that power forward / center position for this team. A little bit more of a small baller guy, similar. But they lost a player in DeAndre Hunter, was a little bit more of a wing. But obviously having Zachary Zarche and Jalen Johnson, adding some more wing / power center depth is key. Adam Porzingis was key to replace Capella. Maybe this puts Onyeka Okongwu a little bit on the fringes, but with them also needing a little bit of a lob threat and another center, it doesn't. And I just think them having this depth is another great value asset to potentially keep on. Maybe Onyeka isn't traded immediately. With Asa Newell coming in, maybe in a year or two, that is where Onyeka's value does go. We'll have to wait and see what the Hawks do or how Asa really works out and pans out. But like I mentioned, really like this pick for the hometown selection here for the Atlanta Hawks. The Thunder were slated at pick 24. Rumors were that they were going to try to trade up in the draft, 15 to 24 to move up. They held 15 and took Sorber, like I mentioned. But with them not having full roster spots still, right, because even with drafting Sorber, they now only have one roster spot and have 2 team options. So keep an eye on them for a trade, but they traded this out of pick 24, which made sense. They traded with the Kings, a team that wanted a pick in the first round, got in, sent out a future first, and they got Nick Clifford, who is my favorite wing in the draft coming out of Colorado State. Really liked him before going into the tournament. Really scrappy, is the ability to create his own shot, be a solid 3-point maker, but also can be a very solid defender. Very easy plug-and-play piece, and I think can really just help out on all ends of the floor. And for a Sacramento Kings team, who not only needs wings, but needs defenders, this was a home run selection. If you can bring Jake LaRavia back, move out of DeMar DeRozan, run some Nick Clifford alongside some Keegan Murray, get some more other defenders, bring back a Keon, keep Devin Carter, really rework this team. Sacramento has the ability to kind of flip the script here. Maybe not immediately, but has the chance to flip it just like that. Looking at pick 25, that's where the Magic come in, and they select Jace Richardson. Richardson's dad obviously being Jason Richardson from Michigan State. But obviously, some great performance from Richardson going into the tournament, coming from Michigan State, a top team in college basketball this season. But following the combine, when you saw his 6-foot listed height, there were some concerns of will he be able to translate with him being so small. With the Magic still needing some scoring and shooting, even following the Desmond Bane trade, it does make sense for them to go and get a guy like Jace Richardson and bring him in to this squad. I really do think that as well, being the ability to play some point guard is key, because they did lose some of that ability with trading a guy away in Cole Anthony, and they still do need that. So we'll have to see what he's able to present to them as the backup point guard position. I'd still expect them maybe to go veteran, maybe trade a guy in Jet Howard who they took a couple years ago, but who knows? Maybe they do keep the shooting, try to pan out with it with Jace Richardson. But once again, I like this pick. I think with a lot of these teams, they did really good with the fit department, and the Magic did that with Jace Richardson here. All right, last 5 picks. We're going to run it quick because, once again, it's almost 5 a.m. now, so kind of wild when recording this, but didn't realize it was going to be this long, so I appreciate if you're watching. But Nets, Ben Seraph, once again, another weird point guard. They're running the depth chart here from the Israeli Basketball League. Another high-level playmaking pass first point guard. We'll have to see what the Nets are cooking up with this. Was projected to go around there. Didn't really do much research. We'll have to wait and see. The Nets also then had back-to-back picks for 26 or 27. They took Danny Wolf there. He was someone that fell from around where Sorber and Berenger were supposed to go around 15 to 17. He falls to the Nets at 27. A little bit more of a playmaking, passing big. With them not going Malawak at 8 and going Igor Demin and going these point guards, it does kind of seem to me that maybe they are keeping Nick Claxton, or if they do have a trade for Nick Claxton, they know they're getting a center back. But that also raises the possibility of Wolf playing power forward, because maybe they do think he can play alongside Claxton, as Wolf did that in his whole career or not his whole career, but his last year at Michigan, where he played alongside another 7-footer, right? And if you think he can be that playmaking, passing big in this paint or in the low post at the low block alongside a guy in Nick Claxton, but also having the ability to kick out to a guy in Cam Johnson or Cam Thomas on the wing, then that obviously presents some great stuff as well. Not to mention, he is just a great facilitator and passer as a big man, and I think that's also going to help with the direction that the Nets have gone. Like I mentioned, 5 out of these 5 picks, 3 of them were point guards, and 4 of them were really, really good passers. So clearly that's something that they want to address. Clearly they need some ball handling. Clearly they want some playmaking and people to set up Cam Thomas, potentially Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, whoever is going to be staying with this team. So that's something to keep an eye on for how they kind of look to rebuild their roster going into free agency. With pick 28, we saw the Boston Celtics, a team that's all represented in the background here, take Hugo Gonzalez, a pick that I was definitely confused on at first because there were a lot of people available that I personally liked, and multiple people I know that followed the Celtics and were reporting with the Celtics kind of liked as well. But Gonzalez, even though he is the kind of uncertain pick here for many Celtics fans going into it, definitely eased my calming of nerves after he was selected, as he played at Real Madrid, solid wing, and has played with former NBA players, guys that have been in very good winning situations, and him himself playing for Real Madrid has also been in those situations as well. So I really like that for a guy in Hugo Gonzalez. Brad Stevens did say that he had been watching him over the last couple of seasons. They have been doing some background work. They do feel like he can come help the game immediately right now. So he's going to be coming over from Real Madrid following the draft, which is very, very cool to see. A little bit more of a, I guess, kind of believing piece, right? He doesn't have that jump shot really coming in, but has those intangibles. And if he can work himself into being a guy that has that high motor and can figure out all the little things that come with growing in the NBA, he has all the main skill set things that you can't teach to really be an impact player across the league, which I really like. Once again, like a guy in Hugo Gonzalez, we'll see what he can bring, but he's a very intriguing name, where Jonathan Givony from the draft Express said he was the steal of the draft here. So that's something to keep an eye on. Definitely got to give him high regards when you hear that. The last two picks here, like I mentioned, the Suns got back involved here with the Hornets trading pick 29 that they had this year for Mark Williams. That pick was then selected by the Hornets. They took Liam McNeely. They're a little filler for Dalton Connect, obviously, in that Mark Williams trade from last year. Kind of funnily, they did take that selection. But McNeely, obviously a scoring small forward, someone that's going to come off the wing, be a high-volume three-point shooter, and I think has some very great similarities, kind of similar to a Duncan Robinson, a Grayson Allen type player in this NBA, which is something that you definitely cannot get enough of and would definitely have some high value and praise for McNeely, fitting in alongside a guy in Con Canepa who also has that shooting and scoring. We know the Hornets can obviously score on offense. They've been a high-volume team with LaMelo and Brandon Miller, but they add two premier three-point scorers to that, which I think is not only going to help their playmaking and the ability for them to generate more shots from beyond the arc, but also creating more opportunities for those guys like Melo and Brandon Miller to generate points at the basket. Let's see what the Hornets can do in the center department. Like I said, still no center at this point from trading Mark Williams. So will they draft one in the second round? Will they make a trade for one? Will they do something in free agency? That's something to keep your eyes on with the Hornets and adding some defense. And then finally, once again, 46 minutes into this video, so I'm halfway falling asleep. So if you're still listening to me, I really do appreciate it. Coming in with pick 30 and the last pick of the draft, we had the Los Angeles Clippers, and they went center and took Yannick Coden-Niederhauser from Penn State. Shout out to him because he was the first Penn State player to be drafted in the first round here ever in NBA history. I don't know much on Yannick Coden-Niederhauser, but I do know that the Clippers did needed some big interior help following with Ivica Zubac, as even though he was their defensive anchor this year and was so underrated and such a valuable piece for the team, it's clearly stated that they still needed some center help, and that when you took him off the court, it was embarrassing, and yeah, they needed to fix that. So getting Yannick Coden-Niederhauser, sorry, you can tell I'm tired, and I'm sorry I mispronounced his name. You can see that the Clippers still need that center, and they prioritized that. And with other centers being available, like Maxime Reynaud and Ryan Kalkbrenner, guys that were a little bit higher on my big board or personal big board, I thought that was a little bit confusing. But obviously, there's still plenty of opportunities for those guys to get drafted. And like I said, draft day 1 is now over. We did see some trades, but 30 selections were made, and there's plenty more to be coming into as the day you are now seeing this, and technically as recording. As of now, we will be seeing more selections being made with day 2 of the NBA draft coming just this afternoon. I'm sure, or just this evening. I'm sure there'll be more trades, more discussions, more picks that we're going to be seeing. Obviously, 29 more following into the second round, and then after that, some undrafted guys. We'll really have to kind of keep our eyes on them and who has some open roster spots. Summer league teams, summer league invites, all that jazz. It will be definitely interesting. And then getting into the free agency stuff. But day 1 of the NBA draft is finally over. Obviously, some shocking things did happen. Some trades, some teams jumping up, some teams dropping down, some shocking selections within these picks as well. But overall, I would say a majority of their teams, in my opinion, here in the NBA draft did very solid in the selections. Teams either got players that I think are very going to fit well, or they got a solid talent that I think can blossom and potentially break out for their team to really make an impact. So I'm very excited to see what draft day 2 looks like for all of us, and I'm excited to see what you guys think down below in the comments section as well. So let me know your thoughts, what you guys think on draft day 1. Who was your favorite pick? Who was your least favorite pick? What are you excited to see coming forward for draft day 2? As like I said, it's going to be an exciting offseason. We've already seen many trades go down already. I can't wait to see what happens further on. Like I said, enjoy the rest of your day or night here, whatever time you're watching this video. I really do appreciate all your support, and I'll catch you guys following draft day 2 with some more updates. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.